I'm Elliot Stewart, and if you tune into Common Lovers Guide on Future Radio, know that I normally am very excited, and I am even more excited now that I'm chatting to Michael Fenton Stevens, who I have played a few comedy songs of from his past. I don't know if he's going to find that particularly embarrassing. Of the heebie-jeebies variety,
Hmm.
I managed to get a few of those songs played, and I won't mention the spitting image one quite yet. But I was just wondering, that's talking about the past comedy wise, but you've been in so much recently, from like Benidorm to Ghosts
Hmm.
to I thought was quite interesting, a dark comedy which was 1990. Now that's a while ago, and that's quite different from your usual guest
Yeah, I
starring
like
role.
to
You,
jump about. I'm quite happy to do any sort of comedy, really. I'm quite happy to do any sort of acting. I don't really think there's any great difference between doing comedy and doing drama. If you're trying to create a situation where you want people to be either moved or frightened or excited, it's the same sort of ability to understand how to do it in order to create that emotion in other people. So it's the same as trying to make people laugh. And quite often the way to make people laugh is to not really do anything, is to try and play it as if you really mean it. The more serious you are, the funnier you can look, I think. If you look at John Cleese thrashing his car with a stick, he hates that car. He wants it to die. He wants to destroy that car. He's furious. And that's what's funny about it. If he was doing it and all the time was sort of slightly laughing to himself, we wouldn't enjoy it half as much.
a lot of modern comedy now, particularly from the Americas, what they call very meta, where it's fourth wall breaking a lot of the time. And personally find that a little bit, it takes you out of it because you stop believing in the characters so much. So
Mm. Well, I mean, we've had programs here that have done that. Miranda was famous for it, but in a way, we're more used to that tradition. I think we're more used to the idea of somebody turning and talking to you. I mean, that goes right back to Restoration comedy, and Restoration plays are done exactly like that, where people are very much in the scene, and then they suddenly turn and talk to the audience. That you don't ignore the audience, you acknowledge the fact that there are people watching, and the same with pantomime. That carries on through that, which is, I think, an enjoyable way to do it. There are certain characters in pantomime that have the license to engage with the audience. So the dame would have that license, and the comic would have that freedom to just suddenly turn and start talking to the audience. The other characters in pantomime play it a bit straighter. They play it as if, sorry, what are you saying? What? It is a bit more restoration comedy, that, for them.
it just occurred to me, of course, that if you do watch that, yeah, the principal boy or the other characters don't have that magic.
No,
They're not allowed to do it. It just that you're absolutely right, because the dame approaches or buttons or whoever. I mean, you write the odd pantomime.
I
Uh,
have done in my time.
yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's
And is
fun.
that
I
quite
like it.
different from what I'm going to say is alternative comedy, if you like, the KYTV and the radioactive? I grew up listening to that stuff and I adored it.
Well, I
But
mean, there are elements of all sorts of comedy in those sort of comedies. We did very, because we came from a university base, we often had things that were quite wordy. Particularly when we did it on the radio, I think that people enjoy listening to the use of language when you're doing comedy. We had a joke that I remember Angus did in Radioactive, and he's always saying to me, I don't know how you remember these things, but they stick in my head for some reason. I've got one of those brains that just hangs on to things if I like them. He had a phrase where he was talking about, he was playing a character. He said, I came back to the hotel room to find my wife and the hotel porter putting the shag pile carpet to the use after which it was presumably originally named.
yeah,
You see, so and that's a very long-winded way to say he came back to find two people shagging. You know,
yes.
yes,
That's the
but
Radio 4 version of
a
that.
Radio 4 version where you're allowed to mention those things, but not.
I like that. I like walls to bounce against when there's an interesting sort of thing at the moment with comedy where some people say you can't say anything nowadays, and when there's the other side where they can say almost everything. Now,
Yes. Well, certainly as far as bad language is concerned, and what people used to call bad language, they were very particular about that on Radioactive when we did it in the 80s. But actually, in a way, the people who were running the stations were more naive. So you could get away with much more. We had a character called Michael Hunt, which we abbreviated, and we had that character in the show simply because we got away with it. The
mm,
very fact that we got away with it once, and they didn't come back and say, I'm sorry, are you saying really probably the rudest word you're allowed to say? You're not allowed to say. You're not allowed to say that anywhere. Probably about the 6th series or something. Somebody said to the producer, are they saying that? He said, no, it's a character. We've had that character for years. No, it's just a character. And they went, oh, okay, good. No, because I just don't want people to misunderstand. But no, of course not.
Well, I was watching one of your live heebie-jeebie things, and I think
Yes.
it's you in Australia, and
Yeah.
there's a point, I hope you don't mind me saying, where you and Philip Pope, if that's right, I got that right, yeah,
Mhm.
seem to be having at the end, I'm trying not to say a screech off, but both PG, because you're going there and he's going, and was there, I don't mind asking, I mean, like most bands, there's sort of a rivalry, and there's 3 of you
Yes.
doing that. So you recorded several albums, in fact.
We did do several albums. We had great fun doing that. It was the thing that really launched us all into it, because we went up to the Edinburgh Festival as students and performed this parody of the Bee Gees, a song called Meaningless Songs in Very High Voices, which was written by Philip Pope and Richard Curtis.
Oh.
Richard Curtis wrote the lyrics, and we did it as part of a late night review show, and it got such an extraordinary reaction. We were offered record deals. We were offered radio series. That's how we got the radio series on Radio 4, because people came to see us perform that song. So it was quite a moment in our careers, really. It launched us all into it. I was supposed to go off and be a lawyer, and I never went back again. I just carried on performing, and thank goodness for that. It was great fun. But it took us all over the world. We recorded all sorts of other stuff. It then led to Spitting Image. The reason we ended up doing Spitting Image is because we were famous for being able to do parodies of pop groups, and that's what they wanted. So, they brought Philip in as a musical director, and I sang with him on nearly every song that we did. It was great fun. Brilliant times.
I remember the chicken song, and before it came out, it was on the TV show, and I had my little cassette, and I recorded. It's a very naughty thing to say. I recorded bits of the show, so because I didn't have a VHS player then, and that particular one. So I had that song. Me and my brother had that song for about, I don't know how many months.
Really? Before it was released?
Yeah. So we didn't bootleg it or anything, but it was in our house in Suffolk. We were listening to it constantly, going, "Oh, wouldn't it be fun if?" And suddenly it was number 1, I think, for quite a long time. Did it?
Well, because comedy shows used to release records. So Not 9 O'Clock News had had an enormous success with a record that they released. Before that, Python, of course, released all their stuff. They would release sketches on records, and quite a lot of young people were introduced to Monty Python, not through the television shows, which were on rarely, but through the recordings that you found on records. The same with the Goons, all these sort of things. Everything was released as a record.
It's like I didn't know there was more Heebie-Jeebies albums. I was like, "Oh, you've done more. That's great."
Yes, we did a second one, largely because we went back out to Australia. We had a big success with it in Australia. We went top of the charts. The album was top of the charts while we were there. And we were lauded and treated like we were pop stars. It was very weird. We did a tour of Australia where we simply sang the songs. And we played massive venues. In fact, we did exactly the same tour as Men at Work, who were huge at the time and had an enormous hit with Men Down Under. So they had an album out, and they toured that album, and we toured our album, and we outsold them. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, and a number of times when I remember turning up to a big pop concert, we did a sort of a Live Aid thing, and we were top of the bill because we were one of the foreign acts. So the Australian acts all came on and did their stuff. And when and even bands like In Excess were a sort of New Zealand band, really, but they performed, and then finally, right at the end, on came these 3 blokes singing silly songs. Crazy.
Did you ever get to meet? I don't know how awkward that would be. Remember Bee Gees with Clive Anderson, and they got very stroppy with him.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to meet anybody that you parodied, and did they take it very well?
I didn't. No, Philip did. Philip met, I think, Morris. Yeah, who's no longer with us. Yeah. And he said quietly to him that he thought it was quite funny, but that he couldn't say that because Barry didn't like it. And I think really, when you think that Barry was the main songwriter, I think I can understand that he would take it personally that you were saying that they were meaningless songs. That's all it was, just people singing in high voices. And
Yeah.
he, I mean, there's quite often with parody, what you're doing is you're picking someone who you know terribly well, and you can see slight comedy in it.
Mm.
But the reason you know it so well is because you're a fan of it, is you know it really well. You know it inside out. And Barry Gibb is without doubt one of the greatest songwriters there's ever been. I would put him in, on the level of Cole Porter and people like that, and even Paul McCartney. I think he's written some amazing songs. But that little period where they all sang in that falsetto voice became funny quite quickly, I think. And that's all we did. We just parodied it. They tried to sue us when we released it. Yeah. So,
Wow.
but it's an original song. It's, we don't copy anything that they do. So we were fine.
I think the Ruttles had problems with that as well. Neil Innes, when he did some of the songs for the Ruttles album, All You Need Is Cash, and the opening track sounded a little bit too much like Get Back. And he had to, but then ironically later, Oasis ripped off the Ruttles, not the Beatles, and he got a credit for Whatever, which was their song. And you can hear but be an idiot. That's right at the beginning of an Oasis track. So it's kind of ironic that the Ruttles sued.
Yeah, see, that's exactly the same tune, is it? How sweet to be an idiot. That's exactly the same tune as the Oasis song. Yeah, so they paid him to do. That's nice. Yeah. But I mean, George Harrison was involved in the Ruttles, so it seems weird that that they should have any pressure to change their music. Maybe that was more from Apple Corps or whatever it was called.
Well, I mean, when it came to like large corporations and corporate this, that, and the others of like when you did, when I say I'm going to chat to Michael Fenton Stevens about KYTV, people go, "What's that kinky thing? Like it's Babe Station or something?" You go, no, it's a comedy show.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, I used to listen to the Radioactive. Sorry to take you back in time.
No, it's all right. It's a strange comedy because it's not really remembered, which is a shame. I thought we were quite proud of it, particularly the third series, which is the one that you can't watch unless you go onto YouTube because it was never released on DVD. And it is the series that we won the Golden Rose of Montreux, with that series, which for nearly every other show that's ever won that, they got a fantastic deal out of it. They would be on television for ages, and it wasn't common for the BBC to win it. So, but strange enough, I mean, it was at a time when everything was changing and new people came in. And at the same time, Chris Morris and Steve Coog and Patrick Marber came up with The Day to Day, which was another television parody. And I think they felt that they couldn't have two. So we disappeared, sadly. But it was, we did 3 series, and that's not bad. That's good fun. Great.
We have panel shows that are very similar to each other, and I remember The Day to Day being on and also KYTV being on, and they were very different approaches. I mean, where Radioactive took the mickey out of amateur or local radio, it was more of a Sky thing. Maybe mocking Sky was a too powerful thing to mock. Maybe I don't know, or maybe not enough people watched Sky at that time to know what it was. I don't think we did. I think although we actually parodied it, I'm not sure that any of us had Sky television. We all just assumed the sort of things that might happen, and then strangely enough, some of those things have actually become television programs. It's very weird. We did we said, and tonight on KYTV, international caravanning, as if we had these ridiculous sports on television. And there are television programs now just where they follow people caravanning. We had topless darts, and the joke of that was that you would think that would be lots of women showing their breasts. In fact, it was just very fat men with their shirts off. Oh, well, there's no kink shaming. I'm sure other people like that sort of stuff as well.
No, we've all got our problems.
But I always feel that you can be a little bit harsher. Like in Spitting Image, I can remember Margaret Thatcher being an alien.
Yes, one of the problems with all those programs is the number of people involved in it, always. I mean, for Spitting Image, you not only had all the songs, so the musicians and the singers and the people who wrote the songs. You then have to hire studios to do it. You'd have producers for it. That's just the music. Then you have the comedy. You've got the people who write the comedy. You've got the people who can do the impressions. You've got the puppeteers, you've got the puppeteer makers, you've got the set makers, you've got the props makers. That if you ever look at the credits for Spitting Image, they go on for ages. They were one of the first that just went through at incredible speed because there were so many people involved in it, and therefore that makes it an incredibly expensive thing to do. And I think that's, although they've got it's sort of come back, it can't be on the scale that it was before, and you can't really afford to be that. Well, to make that many things just before the program goes out, you can't be constantly making it as it's happening. So you have to sort in a way pre-plan things, and you do them all in a way where you say, well, we're always all the Margaret Thatcher things or whatever it would be now, so all the things involving whoever happens to be prime minister at the time. At the moment, I'm not sure. I can't remember any of the names actually.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean, if you were doing Spitting Image now, you would have nobody recognizing the prime minister. That would be the joke you'd go for
Yes.
immediately, wouldn't you? Somebody come and say, well, sorry, are you prime minister? I didn't realize. I thought you were the chancellor. No, I used to be chancellor. I'm not anymore. Oh, when did that change?
Yes.
That's the sketch I'd write. Nearly every, I mean, if you look at, people like David Rennick, who wrote One Foot in the Grave, and Addie Hamilton, who wrote Drop the Dead Donkey, and then went on to wrote Outnumbered and Trevor's World of Sport, loads and loads of things over the years. They had their training in programs like Newsweek and those sort of shows where you would write a sketch, and once you got that sketch on, that was you in the gang really. You'd then go into the BBC, you'd sit in a room with lots of other young writers, and you'd all discuss, what can I write a sketch about? Oh, okay, that's good, you do that one, and then off you go and write it. And that's the way that writers developed, I think, but I don't know if they have that opportunity now. It's very difficult for young writers coming through, I think.
Well, in America, they have a whole writer's room thing. So a strange show like Rick and Morty will have a writer's room of like 16 people who will sit, and then
again, because they have the budget.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly expensive thing to do. Friends had people who specifically wrote for different characters. You would have someone, I write Joey's lines. When we need a Joey gag, I'm the man who does it. And you'd have someone who would only write his jokes because they sort of thought in his way. I know the sort of things that Joey wants. And they would do 2 recordings as well. So they would do a recording, the lines that didn't get very good laughs, they would then sit down and rewrite them. And about 2 hours later, then another audience would come in and they would say, change that line to this. And then they would try a different line.
Wow, I didn't know that. You see, because when you watch some sort of like The Good Life or Dance Army, I always feel like I'm watching in a way, even at this film cutaways, it feels like I'm watching a play.
Yes.
There's a liveness to it. And then when I watch American shows, my son's very much into all this Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Parks and Recs and everything. There's too fast, in my opinion, there's too fast a gag ratio. Every line seems to be funny, and I always feel like things should breathe a little bit more. Just so you get.
Yes, yeah, I like that. I like things presenting themselves not necessarily as if they are comic. I did a series called People Like Us with John Morton, who wrote 2012 and then W1A, and was recently involved in Call the Agent that they did on the television, who's a brilliant writer and a very, very, very good director as well. He's very good at directing his own stuff, which is unusual, actually. Normally people are too pernickety. He is very pernickety, but he really knows what he's talking about. He knows why he's written things. Very enjoyable to work with him. But it was a marvelous series, but the whole thing was absolutely done as if we were not making a comedy. We didn't, nobody involved in it knew it was a comedy. It was done as a completely serious thing. So it was one of those things, a bit like when The Office first came out. People said, well, I don't remember, what terrible people those people are in that office. They just, work running in a print company, and the boss is an awful man. He really thinks of himself. He thinks he's amazing. And there were lots of people saying that at the time, the first series of The Office. They actually thought it was genuinely a documentary. And, that's a credit to their performances, I think.
But and then it was that thing where as your voice, I recognized from when I was bringing up my little son. He's much taller now. You were in Third and Bird.
I was.
That was you.
That was enormous fun. Although it's a strange thing doing a cartoon, a children's cartoon, is that you do it in isolation. So in fact, I would go in to a recording studio and record the lines that I had to say as the character, and then record the songs that I had to sing.
Yeah.
And, if they were singing in harmony, I'd just do my part. And then somebody else would come in sort of a couple of hours later and do their bits. And you never all sat in the same room performing together.
Oh.
No. So everything I did in that show, all 102 episodes, I think, I never met anybody else in it.
There
It's
weren't
weird.
that many. Now I think about it, I must have watched at least most of them with my little boy, and it's
They're
amazing.
very good. If you've
Oh,
not seen them, they're really good. I like
they're
them a lot,
sweet.
and I
Yeah.
enjoyed doing it. I love playing the character, and I
Mm.
like the fact that suddenly there was a whole generation of I had an allotment for a
Yeah.
period, and I loved having this allotment, and I used to sit there, and a lady got an allotment next to me, and she had these tiny children, and she was chatting to me one day, and I was talking about planting potatoes. And I laughed, and the smallest child turned around and went, "Beekman,"
Oh,
and she recognised my voice from it. It's
that
really
is amazing.
sweet.
Yeah, because you also pop by. See, I feel like that child now going, and weren't you in? You're in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, I've
Series
done
that
that as
was.
well. Yeah, but various parts I played. So I wouldn't say I
Yeah,
was a major part in it, but it was fun to do. And what an
so
amazing
sad.
cast! There were
Me.
some of the
Yeah.
people in that. It's a bit like there are things that come along that people say to me, "Oh, you've been in everything," and you go, "Not everything," because I always count the ones that I missed.
Oh,
I mean, Dirk Maggs, who did Hitchhikers, has been doing the whole of the Sandman series
yes.
with
Mm,
Mr. Gaiman,
mm.
and 4 times now he's been in touch with me and said, "Are you available next week to come in?" And I've gone, "No, I'm not." And it's very annoying because I would love to be in those things. They've got some amazing performers, and it just would be a fantastic thing to have as a credit. But unfortunately, I've never managed to get into the studio to record the parts he wanted me to record. But there you
Oh,
are.
there's that thing of like when you get to be in a studio, it's like it might be cold, a bit like it is now at the moment, or that thing, or you get to go to Benidorm, and
Yeah.
I
Oh, my
assume
word.
that
Yes,
was nice.
Benidorm, enormous fun. That again is a very strange. You never know how things are going to work out in your career. I got a phone call right in the depth of winter here. I
Mhm.
got a phone call saying, "Can you come to Benidorm for a day?" And I said, "Well, I'm rehearsing a play at the moment, which we open in about a week and a half. When do you need me to come?" And they said, "Well, the day after tomorrow." And I said, "Well, we're right near the point of opening, so we're going to go into sort of dress rehearsals and things." And I said to the director, "Would it be possible for me to go to Benidorm for a day?" And he said, "When?" And I said, "Well, tomorrow. Would that be okay?" And he said, "No, we're doing a dress rehearsal." I
Oh,
said, "Yeah, but you see, they're going to pay me as much as I'm going to earn for the entire run of this play,
wow.
and it would only take me a day." And he said, "Ah, you bastard."
Well,
And
that's edit.
you can edit that, yes. Well,
That's all
you
right.
can bleep it, I think, because I think it's important to know that
Yeah.
he wasn't pleased with me because he sort of, in a way, I had him over a barrel. He said, "You've got to go." Okay. And he let me go, bless him. And everything was delayed a day. I said, "I promise when I come back, I'll be absolutely on the ball."
Yeah.
And I got on a plane and I flew to Benidorm, and I was picked up at Valencia Airport and I was driven to Benidorm, and I went straight to makeup where they sprayed tan all over me, put me into costume. I then went and filmed. And again, this is a strange thing, is I filmed completely on my own a
Oh
scene
dear.
with me and 4 other people. They'd already filmed the scene. The actor that they'd used had not been able to do the part. He wasn't right for it.
Hmm.
And they'd booked him, and I won't say who it was, but they'd booked him, and he couldn't manage it. So they desperately needed this part refilmed. But they'd already filmed everything involving the other actors, so they didn't need them there. All they needed was me doing my lines, which I did. So if you look at the very first appearance that I make in Benidorm,
Yeah.
I filmed all of that with nobody else there.
Wow.
And yes, and it's a very funny scene.
Mm.
And, that was great. I then went back and had some dinner with everybody and met all the cast, and I knew certain people in it. It was nice. And they said, "Oh, come and have a drink." I said, "Well, I've got to get back. I'm doing dress rehearsal tomorrow." They said, "Oh, just have a quick one." At 4 o'clock in the morning,
Oh.
I went back to my hotel just in time to meet the car that was taking me back to the airport. I then
Yes.
tried to sleep on the plane and then arrived back having promised this director that I would be on the ball. I was just beginning to sober up as we started the dress rehearsal.
Sure. Yeah.
And that, to me, that story completely sums up my experience of doing Benidorm, which was enormous fun and completely wild and mad. We had the most fantastic times singing karaoke with, with the most amazing people, going out through Benidorm town with Shane Ritchie and just going from club to club and singing songs on the stage, and just this huge crowd of people following him everywhere. Johnny Vegas. It was just, we had amazing times. I sang a duet with Joan Collins in a karaoke bar in Benidorm. Those are stories that you're not going to find anywhere else in your life, are they?
No, it's that thing where you get to travel into strange, exotic places and do bits of comedy, and being silly for a living is nice. I mean, there's a not a seriousness, but in a sense that you can't just lark around, as you say. The character you play is
no. In fact, doing comedy particularly is quite a serious business. You're very analytical about it. You're very particular about it. Directors will say, yeah, but speed that bit up and make that quicker. Play less of that. Don't give that away so much. I need that to rush. And it's a very particular, very detailed way to work, and you have to be right on the ball in order to do comedy. I think you have to really know your lines, and so you put a lot of the work in before you get there, and then having got there, you then will play with it, but in a very precise way. And that, I think, is the thing that I enjoy the most about it. And I think most actors who enjoy their work enjoy that process of just do that again, try that bit really works, so repeat that, but make it look fresh. And at the same time, just speed that bit up and then slow that bit down. And it's a great process to go through, whilst all the time making it look as if it's something that's just come out of your head.
I know the Morecambe Wise thing where, when they're doing the whole piano routine and the Griegs thing, and it looks as if it's all happening there and then, but it was this routine they did back in the mid-60s, and they just worked it. And I didn't know.
No.
And then you look at the original, and it's exactly the same lines, but just said differently. They must have just rehearsed the hell out of it to get it.
Yes, exactly. The same with all those great stars. You look at Tommy Cooper, who looks as if absolutely that he's making it up on the spot, and that everything that's going wrong is going wrong because he can't do it. But in fact, he could do all of it, and had really carefully rehearsed all those mistakes.
If you don't mind me asking, who were your sort of comedy influences? As in, when you were thinking, oh, comedy might be for me, was there anybody that you're thinking, oh, Peter Cook or whoever?
No, for me, it goes back further than that. Because in fact, I was introduced to the world of comedy, I think, through the things that my father watched. So I was introduced to it through things like Will Hay and going back, Arthur Askey, those sort of people.
Yes.
It was and the Carry On films, that sort of thing. When I first started as a comedian, I think I was much broader. I had a much more of a sort of a pantomimic style about me. I felt no qualms at all about doing a double take, and I still enjoy a double take. I still think it's a great thing to do, and you can do it in very serious things. It works terribly well. Strangely enough, nowadays, I only ever do it when I'm doing drama, because because you can vary the speed of a double take, which is great fun. So I think a slow double take is quite powerful. So if you say something that I don't quite understand, if I go and I think about it and then I turn back to you, it works.
Yeah.
So these things that were the traditionally comic things, can now be adapted and changed and stuff. So
I'm very much of the mind that I've got an Arthur Askey box set, and I have a Wilson that my dad lent me, and I'm quite obsessed with the fact that there isn't a universal joke, because everybody likes different things. But just because something is 50 or 60 years old, the characters are strong enough, like watching Tony Hancock or
absolutely
even
Flanders and Swan is still incredibly clever and very funny.
my wife didn't believe. I was thinking of double acts now, musical double acts, Hinge and Bracket. My
Yes.
wife was like confused because I made a reference to them, and she went, "What's that?" And I showed them, and she went, "How did I not know about this?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, they were marvelous, and it was a funny, interesting thing." I always feel that, like, as much as alternative comedy said all that old comedy is very safe, there's an edge to even carry on stuff
Mm.
where we're looking at society, or where it's not just oogling bosoms or anything, which is a terrible name for a band. But you know, sorry, that's one of my catchphrases at the moment. If I say something stupid, I end up saying that's a
They
good.
are, all those things are in it, of course.
Yeah.
They are there,
Mm.
So I mean, that very broad comedy is
Yeah.
part of it, but at the same time, it's not all that.
No.
There are lots of you have to vary what you do in comedy, I think, and people always have. So the assumption that comedy would always be one thing,
No.
it doesn't make any sense at all, really. There's always something. There's some beautiful things when you think of when I was a boy, and they used to have Saturday morning radio where they would play extracts. They often played extracts of comedy songs. And there was a marvelous thing about a man, I can't remember who it was, but an old fella there talking about filling a bucket with bricks. And
Right.
then he put the bricks in the bucket
Yeah.
and raised it up. And unfortunately, the base of the base of the buckets was rusted. And it fell open, and the bricks fell out. It was all about just a very long routine about a man putting bricks in a bucket, trying to take it up,
Yeah.
and then the the bricks falling out, falling on his head, and
Yes.
then the bucket coming down because it was lighter because he dropped the rope. I really don't know what it was about, but it was a very funny thing, and it
Yeah.
was just it was all done entirely as if it wasn't funny.
Yes.
I think it may have
Well,
been recorded at the Oxford Union. In
yeah.
comedy, it's essential that you think that people are real. That the
Mm.
farce, which is in a way sort of this, probably the silliest form of comedy that we do,
Hmm.
apart from slapstick, but farce is ridiculous because people are in ridiculous situations, but they don't start off in ridiculous situations. They
Yeah.
start off in a front room,
Yeah.
and that evening their boss is coming to dinner, and they go, okay, fine. And
Mm.
from there, one thing leads to another. One tiny little mistake leads to another mistake, and the attempt to cover up those mistakes leads you to the situation where you're standing in a cupboard with your trousers around your ankles, with two semi-clad women who you've never met in your life,
Mm.
uh, holding a cucumber, and
Yes.
the door is opened by the vicar, and
Oh,
and
crikey.
that's where it takes you to. But
Yeah.
it works because the people involved in it are terrified. They're only making these mistakes because they're trying to cover for the fact that they would be embarrassed if the very first thing was revealed.
I do like Terry and June and those sort of middle class ones because they're farcical as well.
Mm,
Because we've grown up, unfortunately, and not one of my favourite things of reality TV, where people are wheeled on and taken the mickey out of, and then they're unself-aware. To try and write comedy that has that cringe factor, but a comfortable cringe factor, it's quite difficult now, considering that we have regular people who don't seem to know that they're the butt of the joke, and I always find that's a bit cruel.
right,
Um,
yes. Yeah, no, yes, I don't enjoy watching someone who doesn't know they're the butt of the joke. I mean, I don't like elements of Britain's Got Talent and things like that.
yeah.
I don't like the fact that somebody comes on and they've been chosen to come on because they can't sing.
Mm,
And we're all then supposed to find it funny that they think they can sing. I don't find it funny. I
yeah.
think that they shouldn't have been exposed in that way, and so I don't like that. But I do like. Uh, my wife is not terribly keen on it, but I do like. I've watched the other evening an episode of Not Going Out, which I thought was written as a classic farce, and
Hmm.
it was a spoof on Rear Window, the Hitchcock film,
Yes.
and it was extremely well done. The people in it, was an actor called Tony Gardner in it who played the part completely straight and was
Mm.
very funny as a result. And it was a really good comedy, I thought.
Have you seen? You probably have. Hitchcock does a trailer for Psycho, and it's very funny. Like he
Mm.
walks into the room, walks out, and goes, ooh, ooh, I can't do an impression of him, but he just goes, "Don't go in there." Oh goodness me! You know, he's taking the Mickey out of that. He said, "Oh, it's scary, but oh dear, that's
No.
Frankie Howard, surely." But you know, I love the fact when I watched that, it was like if you're able to see the funny side of something that you produce without upending it or anything. I
Mm,
mean, saying that you write panto, and also because you're in other people's stuff
mm.
a lot. Do you find when you're in it, you're just thinking, oh, not that you would. Professionals don't do that. You think I've got a better joke. No. Do you sometimes get that thing of
Um,
going, oh, I could write a better one, but I better not say.
well, well, perhaps I should be, but I am the sort of person who will suggest a line. What do you think of this line? Don't you think we should do this line?
Okay.
And some people will be insulted by it because they would have spent a long, long time thinking about it and been very, very careful about the writing. And the fact that you, on the spur of the moment, might come up with something funnier could be annoying, couldn't it? But I have to say that the people I've worked with, who I think are the best people, are very good at taking those sort of notes. Uh, uh, Traditionally, actors hate getting notes. They hate getting notes, particularly from other actors. You're not supposed to be doing that. But writers, I have contributed lines to things that people have gone, well, that's funny. Oh, we'll put that in. And I mean, I did an episode of Ghosts recently, and
Yeah.
they are really lovely writers, really lovely people, and they take a great deal of care over what they write. But my character was, they said, oh no, just I sort of threw a line in while we were filming with the idea of sort of filling a gap before the thing started, and then they said, oh, do that again, that's really funny. So there was a quite an element of it where I'd improvised it, which is, I mean, I play and if you haven't seen it, this may spoil it slightly, but I play an entertainer. So if you don't want it spoiled, don't listen to this bit.
No, no, I know a little
And
bit about it.
yes, I play in Ghosts. They have to organise a birthday party, and it's
Mm,
for 6 to 7 year olds,
yeah.
um, and they misunderstand it and think it's for 67-year-olds.
Ah, right.
And so they hire an old sort of Sinatra type singer, which
Yeah.
is me, to
Hmm.
turn up to entertain these 6 or 7 year old children at a children's party.
Might
And
work.
the big say, and they have no choice. So on I go and start singing, hey, come on, everyone, let's fly with me. Here we go. Come on. You all know this one. And the kids are just staring back at me as if I'm mad.
Yes.
And I threw in the line, okay, right, let's sing something for the birthday girl. Here we go. And then looked out of the audience and said to the kid, and I don't know any Lady Gaga. But, and
That's nice.
that
That's
it
good.
was all kept
Yeah.
in. It was rather nice. So
I remember 1990 being very, very dark. Have you ever
yeah,
been
99.
in?
It was
Ooh,
it's
yeah.
Julia Davis. She's a
Mm.
brilliant performer, but her the stuff, a lot of the stuff she's done is very dark. There's a series she did with Rob Brydon before we did 99, which I can't remember what it was called, but look it up. Look up
Yeah.
Rob Brydon and Julia Davis, and it's it's really dark,
Oh,
but it's very funny. It's very
I
funny.
yeah. I mean, I know that you pop by in Look Around You. You are the
Yeah,
music guy, and that we're like, oh, there he is again.
one of my
Um,
favorite jokes. Look around you. Yes.
yes,
That's Peter Serafinovich, who's
that's the
gone off
one.
to America and does amazing things over there. But and Olivia Colman, and we had
Yes,
to.
you got to kiss her a lot.
I got to
You were
French kiss her, which
you're
is
the
quite
yes.
something, and not just a
Okay.
kiss. We
No.
actually had to do the full. Let's as if we're quite passionate about this, and that's a very strange thing to have to go. Okay, we just do one more take, and you go, we've done it 20 times now. We really have had enough of French kissing each other.
Yes, that's a good.
Yes,
No, that's
great joke,
really
great
good.
joke. I played a man, somebody at my desk in an office, hands me a piece of paper, walks to the door in my office, knocks on it, and I say, "Go out."
No. Yeah, it's really fun. And
Mm.
again, that's the thing that's played incredibly straight. That's like this
Yeah.
is a kind of Tomorrow's World program, and
Mm.
it's so when you're talking about you can only play this record once, and it gets thrown away, and
Hmm.
all that sort of thing. And there's a lovely thing. It's almost like being invited into a world, like in I was going to say ripping yarns, but I mean sort of like and there's another good one as well. But that was every week. Here is a boy's own adventure, or there's a show
Oh,
called
yeah,
This
yeah.
Is Chintzy, which not enough people have seen, and that's go to this strange sort of Isle of Wight world of
Yes.
you know.
There's been some, there's so much comedy around. I think, you could spend your life trying to catch up on the stuff you've missed. You
Mm.
know, I only saw the Detectorists for the first time recently,
Oh,
and that's been on a long time, and I've only just found it, and now want to go back and watch it all.
yeah, I had that when during lockdown. There was being a student in the 90s. I'm afraid, which I can only apologise for. I had long hair, and I was into Vic and Bob, and they did a thing called Catterick, which I
Yeah.
hadn't seen. And lockdown, I'm like, right, I'm going to watch the tripods from the 80s. I'm going to watch a bit of KYTV. I'm going to get the box sets out. What is this Catterick? Is there anybody of when it comes to? So I mentioned Ripping Yarns as Michael Palin, and you mentioned John Cleese yourself.
Mm.
Is there anybody that you think, oh, not I would have liked to work with them, which is quite sad, but oh, there's still people I'd like to work with?
Um, yes, well, I would like to work with Bob Mortimer.
Oh
He's
yeah.
one of my absolute, and he for a while lived about 150 yards from me, and I used to see him almost every day. And I never quite got the nerve up to say, look, I don't know if you know, but I do a bit of comedy, and if you ever want a man with white hair, I'm there. And I should have done, but I didn't. But I think I think he's a unique comedian. And I've worked with all sorts of people. I did audition for John Cleese for a couple of things. I have worked with him, but I didn't audition for a film that he made. And I would have liked to have done that. It would have been interesting to work with him, I
Yeah.
think, to watch him work. But I enjoy working with young people. I think probably the people that I would like to work with are the people who I don't really know yet. Is to be working with, to carry on working, and for somebody young who's doing something to sort of think, well, because the first time that you do that sort of comedy, which isn't the old style of comedy, which is the new comedy, which is just you say it, you don't acknowledge the comedy at all. The first time I was asked to do that, the people who asked me took a risk on it, really, because I'd not necessarily demonstrated that I could do that in my career up to that point. I'd been in lots of sitcoms, and I'd done lots of it's quite broad comedy, I would call it. I don't know, And then I assumed that, but at the same time, somebody the other day showed me a clip of me in an episode of Shelley, which I always thought, I think back on myself at that time and think, oh God, I was awful. But I saw this clip of Shelley and I thought, oh, it's quite naturalistic, surprising. That's a bit weird. And so maybe I'm not as bad as I thought I was at the time.
Yeah, so
Uh,
you got to be more silly when you were in KYTV with you.
yeah, I like playing all those
Martin Brown.
characters and wearing, Martin Brown, and wearing all those silly
Yeah,
wigs and, lots of beards and stuff. That was great fun. In fact, that's when you become an actor, you think, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just do crazy things and be all sorts of mad characters and do funny voices. But very soon you end up just doing, you get in a way typecast.
which
I've
can be good.
enjoyed recently. I've
Yeah,
been able to go back to what would be my original accent. So when I decided to be an actor, I decided the best thing to do was to be able to speak properly. So I trained myself to speak properly. I also was involved in lots of people at Oxford University, and they all spoke rather posh,
mm,
as far as I was concerned. So I mimicked them, and
yeah,
it stuck. And I've with a double-barreled name,
yeah.
I've often been cast as posh man, and I can go, as I did in Benidorm, go really posh. But I enjoyed recently. I did a film and with very nice people, and I got to do my London accent because I was playing Gemma Arterton's dad. And I said, "What accent are you using for this?" She said, "Well, they want me to be straight, but I think I'm going to just talk the way I talk." And I said, "What's that?" She said, "Well, I'm from London." And I, "Really?" And I said, "Oh, great, because I'm from Bermondsey." She
Oh,
said, "Well, why we do that then? You and I, we just talk like that." I said, "Yeah, all right, great, fantastic." So we told the director, and he said, "Yeah, that works. Okay." So there we were, the two of us, going back to our roots, which was
being
good
more.
fun.
It is odd, isn't it? With comedy is always tendency when you first start it to be a bit broad, and then you find a particular niche, or you find when you're saying about accents. I mean, I'm from Billericay, originally from Essex, and it doesn't. I don't think it's there. But my dad, when he has a few, he suddenly goes a bit Michael Caine. Suddenly, oh, this is coming out like that.
Yeah, very Billericay.
And I used to listen to all the Goons and stuff, and they all used to sort of, you're listening to the BBC, so my voice became quite not clipped. But people think that I've got a double-barreled anything, but it is that thing of people do with comedy. There is a tradition of the Oxford or Cambridge footlights, and from Peter Cook or Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie coming out speaking in a rather posh way about something rather inappropriate, and that sort of stuck. And I feel that's slightly faded away now, and it's but in the same way that Pepper Potts didn't exist when I watched Python being repeated in the 80s, there was still a nice archetype of comedy that I enjoyed.
Yeah, but nobody really talks that way anymore, do they? Even Prince Harry, or is he a prince anymore? I don't know. But yes, I think he probably still is. But he doesn't even speak that way. He's sort of got the I've been in the army, mate, and he still does occasionally swallow the whole thing back. Yeah, that goes out. But basically, he's a bit rough, isn't he?
Who's that in?
That's Harry.
Harry's a bit rough, right?
He's a bit rough, isn't he?
I should have started off the interview talking like this, to be honest.
We could have done the whole thing that way.
I should have done that. I should have talking to Mike.
Talking about comedy, mate. Yeah.
Oh, this game of business.
I always like the Goons character. That's Peter Sellers used to do that character. The bloke who talk like that.
Oh,
Here, don't you take the mickey out of me. I went to Eton, I did. Did you? Yeah, I went to Eton. Oh, how long were you there? About 5 minutes. I was delivering the groceries. Oh, you were a greengrocer, were you? No, more a dirty yellow colour, actually.
So I like that. So this happens to a lot of us. You sit around and you're sort of quoting. I did the same thing. Like you're watching a Monty Python. You're trying not to karaoke along with it.
I know.
And that thing of knowing little routines in your head and suddenly going, "Oh, are you right there, son?" And talking like that.
Yes.
That's the Fast Show had the hardest game of the business, son. That was him. And it is that thing,
yeah.
And
great, the Fast Show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I know. I loved it. Paul Whitehouse, I persuaded Paul Whitehouse and Charlie Higson to perform. I was the very first person to do that. Yes, I worked at Granada Television, and I went to the Edinburgh Festival, and I was supposed to be looking for people to work on a comedy show, and I said to them, "Do you want to write stuff for it?" And they said, yeah, okay. And then I said, actually, you should be in it. You should perform. And then they were going, no, we don't perform. I said, come off it. I knew that Paul Whitehouse did all of Harry Enfield's voices better than Harry. He was brilliant. He was brilliant at loads of money. And I said, do it. And then you look at, I was terribly drunk at the time.
Yeah.
Fantastic character.
What I like about those is they actually managed to do that thing where we have characters, and as much as, and it's my own personal opinion again, that the fast nature of it, I think, slightly damaged comedy where sketches weren't allowed to breathe anymore. And I know the Fast Show was doing a kind of Andy Warhol thing about it, of going, let's just do it quickly, let's just get to the point. And then you end up with Little Britain and Catherine Tate, nothing against them, but the sketches are really short. And I like a good Pete and Dud where you're sitting there for 9 minutes and they're talking about art. And it's that thing of America, Saturday Night Live, when you watch that now, their sketches just are lovely and enormous, and you don't quite know where you're going to be. You might start off at some point here, and over here you're somewhere else. And I love that,
at the same time, there are shows that have been on where you think, so, well, that could have tightened up a bit. It took ages to get to that joke, and was it worth it? So that it goes both ways, I think. So I don't know. I think it's, everything changes, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, nowadays we have little warnings before a Kenny Everett show, even though it's like late at night, saying this will be a bit offensive. And I'm thinking it's 11 o'clock, it's fine. I expect that to be, even The Good Life has a little warning at the beginning.
Yes, I don't understand the world of warnings. I have a feeling, unless you're dealing with children, obviously, but generally, as far as adults are concerned, you sort of go, well, if I am offended by it, then I have the ability to turn it off fairly quickly. So and then I won't watch it again.
Yes.
I've never understood the world of complaints either. We hold a record from Radioactive. We did an episode. Yes, we did an episode called the God Alone Knows Show, a religious show, and we received more complaints than any other radio comedy. We hold the record for it. We were sent the log, the BBC log, which is when people phone in to complain. This is not just you couldn't go online or anything. You had to phone the BBC and lodge a complaint. And we within the first hour after the program had gone out, received over 2,500 complaints.
Wow, there you go. I bet you're thinking, what did we say? Can't be that offensive.
Well, I sort of remember what we said, actually. It was a joke about a character called Honest Ron, who'd released a Bible.
Yes.
We said, Honest Ron's Bible. Yeah, this Bible you've released, it's not, is it the full text? No, it's not the full text. No, it's not the full, it's just all the best bits. It's all the best bits. Right. Yeah. And you've got photographs in it. Were there photographs at the time? Oh, yeah. Yeah, these are genuine photographs from the original, from the moment. Well, I've discovered them, put them in. This photograph of Mary Magdalene. Yeah, oh, yeah, it's lovely, that. Yeah, she's a lovely girl. Yeah. Should she be scratching her ass with a tennis ball?
There you go.
That was the joke. That they didn't like that. They don't, and you sort of, lots of. I don't think you'd be saying these things about the Quran.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's about offending bits of culture. When I was about 15, I thought I'd do a little art project, Christmas cards, and it was Mary, Joseph, wise men, and they were presenting their gifts, but Jesus wasn't interested. He was playing with laser tag. And I got so much. It's the 80s. You could do it, and they know you don't do jokes like. And I think that would be funny now. I don't know whether we'd be able to do it now.
I don't know. There are lots of things you can do, lots of things you can't do, and I always think that if your intention is to be funny and to not offend, then I think you ought to be allowed to do most things, really.
Yeah.
But the problem is that things are used as weapons against people, and I've never liked the idea of upsetting people. I don't like the idea of upsetting people. I'd rather not do the joke than people say, actually, it upsets me or it offends me. You go, okay, fine. I know I've already said that people could easily turn off, but I feel that, you can easily edit yourself. You can sort of go, do you know what? Actually, some people will really find that offensive. Yeah, so let's not do it.
Have you ever been sent like a script? Would you like to be in our comedy show? And then you've had a good look and gone, oh, maybe not for me then.
No, I don't find. I don't find many things offensive. So if it's a good line, I've just been sent a script which has a brilliant line. Again, I've played a lot of vicars in my time, and I'm rather delighted this would give me the opportunity to revisit that character, and it has this wonderful moment where this person is interrupted at the end of during a funeral, and turns to the congregation and says, mourn amongst yourself for a bit, which I think is just a great line.
Yeah.
So immediately I want to do it. I know I don't find that offensive. The other thing I do find offensive is being sent a script that isn't funny. Oh, and I've had a few of those. I've had, we're recording a pilot for the BBC. We think it's got real legs, this one. And I've turned up and I've looked at the script and thought, this is never going to work. This is not funny at all. And I've rarely been wrong. If I had been, I'd admit it.
So I mean, when you were doing stuff in the 80s and everything, there were lots of different comedy from the young ones and everything like that. And
you wanted to be edgy. You were trying to be edgy. We did a character which, and I would still argue that the joke is funny, in as much as we did a character that was an obvious bigot. And so this character said a lot of things, sort of in a way trotted out those sort of phrases that bigots use.
Yeah.
As a character, honestly, I mean, socialists and would say something rude about them, and women, as far as I'm concerned, women, they should know that, and that sort of thing. And then you go, oh my word, that's a bit shocking. But it was deliberately shocking.
Yeah.
It was done in order to get the reaction of, oh my word, there are people in this world who are that stupid.
Mm.
That was what we were supposed to do. And then we performed it at certain places and found that we were getting people almost agreeing with us. And
Okay.
so we cut it because we went, no, this is not working. They're not getting the point of the joke. The
No.
point is not that that's funny, but
Mm.
that people who say things like that are ridiculous.
I had that. I performed at a uni gig ages ago, and there was a Subway sandwich. I was doing some Subway sandwich routine about the elaborateness of the sandwich. I just want a really simple one, and they're throwing things in. And I can't remember what it was, but it was just getting to like a Scooby Doo. I was like, I don't want this, I don't want this. And there's someone there shout out, yeah, the guy who's serving it is insert horrible racial slur here. And I was like,
Mm.
I'm gonna stop my routine now because people are gonna think I'm agreeing with them, and I'm just
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
quite.
sandwiches. You
Well,
know?
I do this podcast where
Mm.
I ask people to tell me 5 things from their life that they'd like to put into a time capsule. And it's called My Time Capsule. And I have an enormous fun doing it. And I've spoken to all sorts of lovely people. And I spoke to the brilliant Ted Robbins recently,
Oh yeah.
has for many years was the best warm-up performer in the country. Warmed up every television show. He's a brilliantly funny man. And he said that when he was a young comic, we were talking about heckling, when he was a young comic, his best joke, which he used to say for the end, was my uncle Arthur died, and so I took my aunt to a séance because she wanted to make sure he was okay, and make sure he was okay. And she said, Arthur, are you there? And this voice said, I'm here, I'm here. And she said, are you all right? He said, yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, yeah. He said, what do you do then? He said, well, I'm mostly, we get up in the morning, we have a bit of sex, we have some salad, and then we have a bit more sex, and then some salad, and we have a lot of salad for lunch, and some sex, obviously. And then most of the rest of the day, just sex and salad all the time. And she says, oh, I had no idea heaven was going to be like that. And he said, well, heaven be buggered. I'm a rabbit on Hampstead Heath. That was his joke. That was his,
Yeah.
that's a winner. That's always going to work. He said he was playing a club and dying desperately. Nobody was laughing at anything. They were just staring into their beer. And he thought, oh, well, I'm gonna have to cut to my funniest joke. So he started that joke. He said, anyway, my uncle Arthur died. And a voice from the back shouted, I bet it weren't from laughing.
There you go. Boom. How do you follow that?
Yeah, it's a brilliant
Exactly.
put down.
It's always that slightly terrifying thing. I mean, you've done your live panto, you've done live shows, you've done television. Do you have a preference? Do you prefer like filming, or do you think, oh, live is more exciting?
No, I don't really have a preference. I like all of them. They're all different, um, disciplines. I like doing radio because it's very instant and you make decisions very quickly and you do that. But I also enjoy the repetition of performing for camera. I like the process of doing it again and honing every little moment in it and trying to get exactly the take that you want. And then also, trusting the director. You have to trust the director, and he's going to cut between different takes and use the bits that you think, well, I did it best then.
Mm.
That's my best take. Use most of that, and generally they do. Occasionally you'll see something and go, why did they use that take? That's terrible. I missed it completely. I mistimed it. But I enjoy that. I love being on stage. I love being in front of an audience. I have no. It doesn't frighten me. Which people say, oh, I don't know how you do that. Oh, I couldn't do that. And I've never had that. I've always thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I just go wrong. Or,
Yeah.
I say to people, sorry, I've forgotten the words, and they go, okay, that's it. It's not the end of the world. And so I enjoy being on there and I love making people laugh. I think it's great if you say something and then you get that reaction from a great crowd of people. They all laugh at the same time. It's a beautiful thing. It's really enjoyable. But I also enjoy holding just the ability to hold people's attention while you're performing is a great gift, I think. And so I'm very lucky, I think, to have developed those skills and to have had the chance to do them. So I enjoy all forms of it. Actually, I say, reading audiobooks is hard work. That's all I'm going to say. It's a lot of reading over a lot of days. Just taking someone's book and reading it out loud It takes days and days and days, and it's hard work. But so that's the one element that when I win the lottery, I probably won't do.
Okay.
Hmm.
Although might put your voice into you could sell the copyright of your voice.
Very soon we're going to be
Algorithm.
replaced by AI, so it doesn't matter. They're going to,
So,
the whole acting profession will be replaced by AI, and it'll become so brilliant that they'll be much better than we are at doing it.
possibly
And
not
then,
comedy timing though.
well, but can you teach, if you can teach it, to say the words and say them properly, you can probably teach it to do the timing.
That's true. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me today, and I shall tune into more of your podcast, and I shall definitely be seeking out all the sort of stuff that you mentioned as well. I'll then watch some more Will Hay and
Yeah.
Esky, and enjoy the rest of your where are we? Tuesday. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you.